Welcome back, episode 51 of the Ground Up podcast. Donald Trump has hit the UK with tariffs of 10% on exports to the US as he ignited a global trade war that could wipe billions off economic growth.
Yes or no answer question for you two. Will you ever go into politics?
For April Fools, I was going to go to site whilst the archaeologist was working on one section. I got these gold coins, these chocolate gold coins. I was going to bury some. Oh my God, Roman gold coins. Thought that'd be funny.
Slightly more important things to be getting on with, Dorian.
I'll start with the bad. The bad is I need to find 1.25 million by the end of next week.
He's got more sales than he can cater for, and he's not able to cater for them. My mind blew.
They won't say things. Why don't you just do that? And then they'll go,
I say that to my wife all the time. She'll be a little bit upset about something, and I'll say the solution is beyond being upset about it.
You got a gold coin for your participation.
Do not entertain.
Ground up sound. Ooh, yeah. Real estate deals. We lay them down. Let's get those deals. Deals making money, baby.
welcome back, episode 51 of the Ground Up podcast. We are 1 week away from a year's worth of this podcast, week and week, back to back, never gave up, consistency, baby. We are here, but sadly, Stuart's not here. Stuart's away today. I can't remember where he's gone again.
He's going on the biggest ship in the world, apparently.
He is. He's gone on a huge cruise ship, and he said, "Oi, boys, let's do Thursday morning next week, so I could do it just before I go with the kids." And then it got to last night, and he went, "Oh, I can't do it. I've got to get the kids ready in the morning." It's like, well, yeah. Did you not think about that last week? So we may or may not have Stuart. He might pop in on his iPhone. We'll see. But this episode, only just planned it literally about 2 minutes ago. But it's going to be a good one because we're going to talk about tariffs that have just come and hit the UK from the US. Thank you, Mr. Trump. And also we're gonna bitch a lot about banks. We've decided that that's what we're also going to do. So we're going to talk about banks and how they screw us all as developers and work with us at the same time. We're also going to talk about Darren, who's just won £100,000 because he's a beast.
And it's gone.
And it's gone straight away.
Oh.
He's gone.
You ever watched that South Park episode? You know South Park where they go into the bank to set up a savings account, but the savings account is like an investment savings account because he has money from like his nan or something, and he sits at the bank and the bank says, "Right, to open an account, we need to at least deposit like $5,000." He's like, "Well, I've got $5,000. It's great. Okay, I'll put it in the account now, and I'm just going to set it up there. Oh, I'm going to invest in it, and it's gone." And you're like, "What do you mean it's gone?" It's just, I'll just give you. He said, "Yes, and if you want to carry on using this bank, you have to deposit more money because there's no money in your account. You're going to have to close it." It's like, "Oh shit! Right, okay, well, here's like more money." He's like, "Great. Well, I'm going to put that in there. I'm going to make sure it's hedged across different portfolios, and it's gone." He's like, "Yeah, what do you mean?" Just sorry. It just flashed that back to me. Then sorry.
I do like South Park. Generally, do take they say that if you get on South Park as a politician or as a corporate company or something like BP did famously with the oil spillage, if you get on South Park, you've done bad. You've done bad.
Yeah, I wonder if we'll see any Beaumont and Partners or Castell Group on there.
Maybe one day. Or just the Ground Up pod in general. Fuck us all. But yeah, anyway, good start to the pod. Episode 51. Big love. Thank you for being here. And make sure you share this podcast. Yeah, just like I'm starting to front load this stuff now. Subscribe because it helps us. Drop a comment, even if it's just like a well done, boys, or if it's just like a shit episode, do better next time. Whatever you want to comment, just engage. Helps the algos. And share this with people who you think may find it interesting in the property or business space in the UK. Right. Let's just start with Mr. D, because Mr. D's had a pretty stellar few weeks here. So he won something, got Goldman Sachs 10K thing, right? And then he's got 100K last week, and then you sold a £12 million deal, and now you're trying to sell another £13 million deal. Just give us a bit of a lowdown the last few weeks, and then tell us all the shit stuff that's happened as well, just to counterbalance it nicely.
Yeah, it's quite funny because I was saying this to my my wife because I've been working long hours recently. Probably still not as many as Jack, to be fair to him, but I've been working long hours to midnight, and so there's been so much going on trying to get stuff over the line, and they're all decent things, which is good. But I came home the other day And this is off the back of, 3 midnight finishes, not even kidding, still up at 5 a.m., still trying to get like the gym in, trying to cram everything in. And I came home the one evening, I think it was like 7:30 or whatever. And my wife said, how's the day been? And I said, yeah, well, I've got good and bad things. Where do you want me to start, basically? And she said, just whatever. So I said, right, well, I'll start with the bad. The bad is I need to find 1.25 million by the end of next week. And also we've had a spot check from HMRC, which will be fine, but they're sending 3 guys down to come and inspect the premises and go through all of our pay-as-you-earn records, which is typical for a construction company because obviously we're quite large. We have a lot of CIS, and it's rife for people not following IR35. They've assured us it's random, but that's whatever. It still adds a lot of thought, doesn't it, and pressure and consideration. So that was 2 bits of like bad news on the one side of the spectrum, and then good news is that we had a very good call with this partnership that I've been working on for the past nearly a year now, which is it's going to start at a £10 million partnership, and then hopefully it's going to expand into 20 and 30 thereafter, and with a real serious player, proper vetted, been to their offices. They as soon as the name's dropped, it won't take long for people to confirm that it's all legit. So I had good and bad news on either side of the spectrum there, and then in between that, tons of stuff, and that's like it's been feeling like a typical day at the moment. And then on the next breath, bless her, she's like, "Oh right, okay. Like, do you reckon you could take the kids to school tomorrow?" I'm thinking, "Oh my fucking hell! Like, what did you not?" But I'm not trying to talk down on it. The kids are really hard work at the moment. But anyway, side point. So what's been happening? Lots of stuff. As you know, I won the Unlocking Finance Icon Award from Goldman Sachs, which I'm very grateful to. Luckily, Jack wasn't there because he would have beat me to it, definitely. So you'll probably get that one next year, Jack, and I've already got it locked away now, so that's good. And
it's not the award I want. I'll be coming up to Wales to get that 10 mil. Don't worry about the
award. Yeah, fair. And then
what I'll do, Darren, is I'll dress up 3 of my blokes as HMRC, get him inside, and then you're fucked.
I know, right? Take that big check now.
Yeah.
In addition to that, I sold a site, a £12 million development, which we sold the site and entered into contract, which is great news that we've been working on that. And so we had some cash come back in. And then I won the 2nd place at the Stelios Young Entrepreneurs UK 2025 Award, founded by Sir Stelios, the founder of EasyJet, his philanthropic foundation. So I won £100,000. It's landed in the bank, which is great, and it's been put straight to work. Went straight out the door into unlocking more social homes. Also got some good PR press coverage in things like the Daily Mail, the Metro Mail, the Swansea Bay News, the Manchester News lot. So that's all good. And then now I am trying to raise this 1.25 million and hopefully securing this site, which we've exchanged on. We've already put down a 10% deposit, but we've run out of time on our long stop for various reasons, because everything is slow. And the vendors refuse to extend, and they've also issued us notice. So if we don't complete, we'll lose our deposit, and also all of our soft costs to date will become sunk costs. So we'll end up losing like 150, 160,000 plus. So we got a choice to make. Do we go and acquire it? We're not in contract with the HA. Whilst we've got an agreed deal with them, it's not in contract formally. So there's a risk that they pull it. I mean, it could happen. And if that happens, then we'll probably lose a lot more than 150,000. But what do you do? We've made the calculated decision to go for it because we're quite experienced in the sector, and we know that if this HA won't do it, there's 3 others that probably will. It's got planning, it's got SAB, we've discharged all the conditions. So we're left really with that final risk, and we're quite comfortable because we've done it time and time again. If I was speaking to somebody inexperienced in the sector without the contacts like we have, I would advise them probably not to do that, but it's a bit different for us. So yeah, boots on the ground, raising the funds, got to try to complete within a week, and then that will be a £13 million deal. So fingers crossed.
Fucking beautiful, mate. Can we just double tap on that a little bit? So, if you don't mind, D, it just might be useful for anyone out there who's trying to think about how, like, the sort of risks you're taking on, the proportionate risk that it is. So,
Yeah.
150 grand sunk cost you could just lose. Obviously, that doesn't pay any weight into the opportunity cost of the profit that you're also not then getting for selling it, right? And then the works and the continuity of that 30 million pound works that you would have brought into the business. So, how, like, as a rough percentage, like, how important is that one site for your next year of pipeline? Is it like 5%, 10% of pipeline? Do you have any kind of numbers on that?
So from a pipeline point of view, it equates to 5 to 6% of our pipeline value. So it is still material. In terms of annualized turnover, it will our next 12 months rolling turnover is expected to be 34 million. So if you knock that out, it equates for about, because the deal's spread over 2 years, it
Yeah.
equates for about 20% of our turnover. So it's a material figure.
Yeah. So, and then that's where you're balancing up, because, we talk about this a lot on the pod, though. If you're an entrepreneur or a businessman or a developer, you've got to take on risks at some point, and calculated risks is literally the name of blind risks. Are obviously just stupid, but there's an element of blind risks to some extent that everyone has to take. But calculated risk that you're taking is interesting, wasn't it? Because the calculation could not work out, but like you say, you've got 3 backups. You're pretty confident you get it done. Maybe you tie up a bit of capital for a bit, it takes a bit longer, but at least you will eventually realize it.
Yeah, and I think that's the ultimate scenario. Is you've always got to ask yourself, what's the worst case scenario, and can you swallow it? Right now, our worst case scenario is that we don't complete, we lose 160,000. Could we swallow it? The answer is yes. Do we want to? And obviously, our turnover drops and the forecasted profit drops and all that sort of stuff. Do we want to do that? No, not at all. But we have really, really considered it. We've had lots of conversations with the housing association that's looking to buy it. We are, they've confirmed viability. The legals are ongoing as we speak. The technical kind of scrutiny bit's done. Welsh Government have allocated grant funding for it. We've got full planning for it. We've discharged the planning conditions. We've got full SAB for it. They had a couple of off-site issues and a potential ransom issue. We've resolved both of those. They had a party wall issue. We're now comfortable with that. So lots of the other risks during the way we have mitigated or eliminated, but we are still left with a big elephant in the room, in that the kind of final risk remaining is the HA will change their mind and just pull out of it, which could happen. It has happened to us before, which obviously you never want. But if they do that, we have contacts with 3 others that operate in the area that we know could do the deal. Our risk is, would they still be able to honour the same price that we've got? We don't know.
And what's the worst case if you complete the purchase and you just can't get a HA to buy into it? What happens?
We were going to decant this office and go and stay there as the new office.
Is it just the case that you would just tie up so much capital because the private market alternative just doesn't return the same way? So you're just going to tie up.
I mean, it's allocated in the main grant funding for Welsh Government. So it's, in terms of the homes in the local authorities' plan for immediate delivery. So it is a high probability someone was going to want to step into that because they're committed homes. They're deliverable in an area that needs housing and it also has grant allocated to it. So because of that, that's the one big thing that's making us say, as well as that we have the contacts, in the balance of probability, it's probably going to come off. It's way more up there than it is. It's not even at 50%, I would say. It's way more.
But if it doesn't,
yeah, if it doesn't, mate, we're in for a difficult time. There's no two ways about it. Yeah.
Is that just because of tying up capital? So you just accept it?
It's just expensive. It's 1.25 million. You're going to tie up capital, and it's going to be very difficult to
Untie.
to move forward efficiently when that weight of capital is dragging you down. You're going to have some big chains on our ankles.
Darren, question for you, Darren, do you think you could sell this site on now for more than what you've got it agreed for?
No. that's where it's it is a
That's
risk.
kind of always a marker that I look at if we're taking a punt, which you say like worst case scenario. I always believe that if you can, and typically we can normally buy a site and trade it on for more than we've got it agreed for.
Joe, it's probably just geography that changes that, though, isn't it? Like literally the geography of where you operate and where D operates.
Yeah, I mean, we could be selling to anyone. We could be selling to, whereas you're obviously in quite a niche market space where probably everyone knows everyone, and there's only a few people that would do it. And if those few people won't do it, it becomes a graveyard.
Well, yeah, our pool of buyers are 4, basically. That's our pool of buyers.
That's crazy.
We've got contacts with them all. Obviously, it's underpinned by the biggest thing they're all underpinned by is that allocation, which we know it has. So that's what strengthens the case. If it didn't have that, then it'd be even more of a punt. Now we're still classing this as a calculated decision because we've been in this position before. We know how the system works. We know it's got the allocation, so it things it. But yeah, look, guys, there's no choice about it. This is a very risky move. I wouldn't advise others to do if they didn't have the past trading track record or experience and contacts that we do. I would be saying as like an external advisor.
I think from an advice perspective, it's always good to understand completely what, like you said, like the worst case, the best case, the possibility, the probability, the likelihood, the risk, the downsides. What have you got to do if it does go wrong? But equally, if you can sit there and go, I want to take that risk, like if you can actually say that sentence, you've probably got comfortable and you've got to stand by it to acknowledge that. But I find that crazy how small your market is to show you how opposing my market is. We got a position on a site probably like 6 years ago. It's an airspace scheme. We managed to get consent for it, but the consent took forever because essentially we went in for 3 units on top of a block in London, and we then got knocked back for 3 units. Then we had to go back in for 2. And while we're doing all this process, we had to serve section notices to the existing block and leasees underneath. So it was a massively drawn out, long planning process, which was fine because one, we're quite lean on our costs because we've got most of that stuff in house. And 2, it was a conditional contract. So we didn't actually have to buy it until we got the consent. Anyway, last year we ended up buying it. So it's airspace scheme. We're planning for 2 units. And it's now kind of, because it's taken so long, it's too small for our business to really deliver a scheme of that size.
Yeah.
So we decided to sell it. It went on the market with an agent. We had a few people tire kicking and this, that, and the other. But we actually have sold it to someone in our own database.
Really? Nice. Yeah.
But that just goes
good
to show like how much of a wide market we have, that we've managed to avoid an agent fee because we found the buyer and we sent it out to our own database. Someone, yeah, I love that.
And it's important, right? Because it does come back to like demographics as well and desirability of thing. I know with all of my fundraising activities and conversations I spend a lot of time in and around London, as you guys know as well. And time again, funding support for London, for home counties, for strong areas around there is it's great appetite. They all know them. It's all confidence. As soon as you start going intervention to Wales, they're like, whoa, where's that? What's hang on a second. I'm going to have to take this to my senior underwriter to see if I'm thinking, well, I can tell you the answers already know then. But it's funny. And I think you're right. Our pool is very small and obviously it's niche. And even if we went into some other areas as well, it would follow the same concept because we are specialists in social and affordable new build delivered housing. And we would, the whole model is that we need to forward sell, ideally take contract positions. So we're still taking that level of risk, but instead of on 1.25 million allocations, it's now more like on 50 to 100 grand allocations. So we could do 10 deals for the same risk in terms of money wise for that one. And statistically, if we follow our same process, 90% of those deals will come off. So
how many deals do you just accept the L on the soft costs on, where you just have to like lose the scheme, either because you can't get planning or because you can't get buy?
Yeah, well, I've jumped a couple of steps. Our soft costs, like most developers, go in steps. The very first thing we'll do is pre-app, ultimately. But most of the time, what we do, because we have the contacts now, before we spend any money, we'll check demand. So we don't spend anything. We get our design teams do layouts for free. Very rarely we have to pay for them. If we do, we're talking in the hundreds of pounds. And then we'll take that, show it to the client, and providing they say yes, it's a goer, viable, and like grant wise, then we will progress it to a pre-app. And if that's negative, obviously we have to kill the scheme. So, we'd have at that point we'd end up losing a few thousand. But we have an in-house planner that does.
How often does that happen? How often do you lose a pre-app?
But you have to, don't you, Darren? You've got to be prepared to throw some capex and soft costs.
Yeah, you have to.
It's
oh shit! Oh yeah.
Like when I speak to some developers who want to start scaling a pipeline, the first thing I ask them is, like, what level of working capital does you have to allocate towards stock? And they're like, what do you mean? I'm thinking, well, you can't, if you're going to go into like land plays and try to get your own permissions, because any consented site is really competitive and very expensive, and most of the time they don't work. It's or you need a lot of patience to get them to work. You have to, as Jack said, that you have to throw money at some of these things. Once you've done all of your DD that's free, your appraisal, your demand check, if it's green or there or thereabouts, you have to now spend money on pre-apps and serious reports before you fully commit, so you can still pull out. I spoke to somebody before, I'm going on a tangent here, but it's important. I spoke to a developer before who, instead of paying the 10 grand for a coal mining risk assessment, intrusive one, on a site that they had, because they didn't want to spend that 10 grand and potentially lose it, and this is the kicker, they went ahead and bought the site without the investigation.
No, I don't want to spend 10 grand. I'll spend 500 grand buying it.
Yeah, but it's easier to raise finance from investors on acquisitions who sometimes don't ask those questions.
Hoodwinking. Hoodwinking.
I've got another example of that, but even worse. Taylor Wimpey bought a site in Henley-on-Thames, and they didn't do any ground investigations. And basically, one of their planning conditions was to put forward not only like the irrigation plan, but also the drainage plan and the foundation plan. And they found out that there's like an underland stream that runs underneath the whole site. They'd bought the site for 18.5 million 7 years ago, and they still haven't agreed a plan. And I don't know if it will ever get built out.
Wow.
And that's an example of a big entity not doing their pre-purchase requirements to make sure that it's de-risked.
Yeah. Look, guys, it's so important. Anyone listening, and you can do all that, and the risk will still come up. Like, we've got a site now. Our DD identified it was in an area of highly, historic importance, which normally means archaeologists have to get involved. And we did our pre-checks and tests and all that sort of stuff. And then you have to then fully commit, which is what we did. And we're on site, and the first phase went well. And now, during the excavation stage on a different plot, they think they found a 200-year-old courtyard. So we just need to figure out now. It's always going to be like, you can only ever test elements of site. You can't test the whole site. So we need to see, with the archaeologist is already on site with their little brush and stuff, figuring out if they deem it of significant importance. If they do, well,
there's actually a way to plan for risk like that. Our non-exec advisors taught us it, and we integrated it into our spreadsheet. So let's say you're buying a development site, and you say it's probably going to cost £200 a square foot to convert this building from A to B. Within that detailed operation, you'll go Windows X, plasterboard Y, removal of asbestos. And if you put the top cost for everything, it might be the difference between a deal working and not working. And what we now do is you put in the cost of the actual element. So let's say it is asbestos removal. You then do the potential variation of cost that could come into play. So I've seen developers, one that's a mutual friend of all three of us, he's had to spend about 85 grand on removing asbestos, which wasn't budgeted for. So if you've got in your spreadsheet a 5k cost to do an asbestos survey and discount that, by the way, you should really be pushing that on the seller because it's their problem, not yours, before you buy it. But that as an example, we then look at the variational cost. So that will go from 5k to 85k. We then look at the probability of that happening. So the probability is evidently looking at if you're buying a site and you've got to remove all the trees, and to remove all the trees, you might have to sort out access on the right hand side, and you don't know if you're going to be able to arrange that access. The probability is quite high you're going to have to organize that access. Whereas finding a buried Tutankhamun is very improbable, but that should you might want a budget in there. And then we also look at the impact that that has on the scheme, because then you can devise where you spend your money on de-risking those things. So for an example, if you do have to arrange access on the side, but the impact of that is fairly low because you can get access out of your own access, but it would just be more expensive if you do it that way. The impact of that on the scheme is not detrimental. It doesn't stop build for 6 months. It doesn't prevent you getting from A to B. So looking at those ailments helps you analyze that risk, and we factor that into every cost line item on our projects now.
Makes sense. What I was gonna do for April Fools, I was gonna go to site whilst the archaeologist was working on one section. On another section, I got these gold coins, these chocolate gold coins, and I was gonna like bury some just around. So then when it started uncovering, like, oh my god, it's like these Roman gold coins, and then really though, there'd be fucking some cheap chocolate shit. Thought that'd be funny, but I didn't do it in the end because in case it blew the site up and be like, whoa, everyone shut everything.
Also, probably because you got slightly more important things to be getting on with, Dorian.
Yeah,
Burying
that's
chocolate
true.
Than putting gold coins in front of the colleges.
Everyone's got like this inner child in them, haven't they? I think
Oh,
so
definitely.
important not to lose that. But you're right. Yeah, you have these great ideas. Does anybody like watch that film? I'm going off on a different tangent now with Adam Sandler. You seen that film Click, where he has the remote
sick film.
and he like can rewind and stuff like that?
Yeah,
How
Click's
cool would that be? Have you ever been in situations
Beautiful.
before where you'd love to have like said something or done something, but like the chain reaction could be quite explosive, so you obviously don't. But wouldn't it be great to just experience that and then obviously just rewind like?
Yeah, I'm the opposite. I would rewind back and be like, right, what should I say, rather than me just speaking my mind and then just. So I experience the onslaught because I just say it as it is.
I've seen that with you, Jack. I can just I see you. When you'll just say stuff as it comes up, which which is a great trait. But you're right. It could if that can, you've probably landed yourself in some situations
all the time something comes up in my head and my body doesn't say, don't say that because you shouldn't say that, or I don't have the confidence to say that. And then I say to myself, what are you going to gain from saying that sentence other than self-satisfaction? Do not say that. And then I just sit there in silence, and in my head I've said it. It's always wrong. I always say the exact wrong things, but I intentionally know the impact. It's asking the question that people are thinking, and you just say it because why not?
I do think that's valuable to say the thing that no one's thinking, and I always find it funny when it's particularly with like my missus, like friendship circles and just generally girl circles, because they won't say things, and I'm just there going like, well, why don't you? Like, I'll hear their conversations and I'll just say something and butt in and just go, well, why don't you just do that? And then they'll go, you can't do that, and I'm like, fuck, you're in a different planet. Like
that comes back to providing solutions to the other half. Where they don't want solutions, they want you to listen.
I got in trouble because we were at a breakfast with another couple, and anyway, I'm close friends with the guy, and his missus was just like, I just don't enjoy my work, and I was like, leave then.
Yeah,
just leave.
and
it was like I'd almost, but no one else has said that, and I was like, what? Like for me, and this is what I say to my wife all the time. I'll just be like, well, just don't do it then. Just do that. And it's not what they're looking for.
Yeah, it's not what they're looking for. Yeah, I can see. I could feel the tension, the invisible tension outside the room. What we just talked about there, like from my week, obviously we didn't go around the room to talk about your two guys' week, but no doubt
your week's more important.
Well, no, no doubt it's been just as eventful.
Yeah,
but
I was busy doing an archaeological dig in Swansea actually last week.
Causing trouble on site. But like Jack, I know, for example, you're working on very stressful, multi-7-figure things right now. I know that, and in fact, 8-figure things that you've shared with me. and you don't have time to not know what the solution is or the list of solutions. You don't have time to sit there and just talk about it without anything meaningful coming up of like what could happen, what could you do about it? Because if you do that, you'll fail, basically, in business.
100%. I say that to my wife all the time. She'll be like a little bit upset about something, and I'll say the solution is beyond being upset about it. I'm not giving her a solution because I'm not allowed to do that anymore.
Let me add to that though, just because I think that the whole thing about being someone who starts something like a business and builds it is that you're generally the person that doesn't know the answers, so you don't have the solutions, but you're the person best equipped to find solutions. And over time, yeah, and I've always liked the way you acknowledge this. You just call people solution providers if they're building a business, and that's kind of the fundamental task, isn't it? You don't have to know the answer, but if you're quicker to get to know the answer, and you can delegate that, or you can find the people who've got. Like there was something the other day, we're struggling on the construction business to hire a staff member, and there's just a weak talent pool up here, and I was just called D. And just went, D, I'm having this problem. And he went, oh, I had this exact same problem down here. Here's a solution. And I went, and literally, I said on the phone, I was like, oh, cool. That's about it, really. So, yeah, sorted. Nice one, mate.
Did he help at all? I haven't. I'll check up after this.
Yeah, they're working on it now. Yeah, they're going to see if they could do it. I mean, we've got interviews. It's just there's just for the viewers' benefit. We're trying to get a contracts manager in. But the problem you've got when you're when you're not one of the big construction companies, or you're not a big house basher, is why would a contracts manager want to come and work for you for what's going to be lower benefits and wage, and also just aptitude of work, compared to when they go work for one of the big boys, because there's a limited talent pool of those people. But Dorian's got a way where he can go direct and try and headhunt those people, so he's going to help me out on that, and that's hopefully going to solve a problem for us.
Interestingly, do you guys ever meet those business owners that are not that solution provider and actually more of like just a technical
It
person?
Baffles me. Yeah.
Like for an example, we're working our nuts off in our surveying business to constantly drive business in. We're like on it. We're working on our business to constantly improve our operations and our efficiency and our margin and our, if we can in any way save a tenner, we're working on that. And, we're growing to quite a substantial business now. And then I look at other businesses. For an example, we fit this moisture type extractor fan in our HMOs, and there's this one company that's local to Henley on Thames. The guy's quite technical, and he understands these modules inside out. He's designed them, he's patented them, he gets them built in like Poland, and then he ships them over here. But he's so technical in the weeds. But I believe his business could be massive, like absolutely crazy big. But it's never taken off that much, because I'm like, why doesn't more people outside of Henley know of your product? Anyway, the principle is, I was chatting to him the other day. I was like, "How's business?" And he was like, "Yeah, good. We just can't keep our stocks up." I was like, "Why not?" And he was like, "Well, we're selling too much." And I was like, "Right. So what's the problem here?" And my mind blew. Like, he's got more sales than he can cater for, and he's not able to cater for them. I was like, "Why not then?" He was like, "Well, production in our existing unit is not capable of producing that amount." And I was like, "Up your prices, double the capacity of where, like, find a new place that you can produce these things." And he's like, "Yeah, it just comes with stress, though, doesn't it?" I was like, "Well, not really. If you could double your revenue,
Yeah.
But anyway, so I'm sat there thinking, I'm busting my nuts to get sales through the door in our business, and you've got it on a fucking tap, and you're not willing to put the ops in.
Some people just don't want to grow. Some people just don't want to grow, do they? They're just like, nah, I don't want to. There's too much headache beyond where I am now. I just want to chill here, making a few $100 grand.
But it's kind of like, I see it as like turnover capacity. Like, it's very, like, I think some of the best businesses in the UK operate between like 2 and 5 mil turnover, but they've reached their capacity to take it to the next level.
Well, I think, as we talked about before, Jack, for them to take a step up, they have to travel through that death valley that nobody. Once you start experiencing a little bit, it's hard to explain, but we talked about it before. But Jack's completely right. There's capacity levels for every stage of the business, and for you to traverse from, and it's a bit different for every type of business, but for you to traverse from one level to the next level, you don't just keep going up. You actually take a plummet and come back up. And it's like called Death Valley, and it's widely known. People have written books about it. And actually, when you experience it as a business owner, it is incredibly challenging, risky, stressful, and but there's some people who are wired to fucking just want to go through that.
Also, there's the natural business cycle up and down, ideally on the upside, but unfortunately, bad timing in a market can fuck you when you're in that lull, like high levels of inflation, high interest rates, bad market sentiment, lack of buyers, lack of consumerism. Like all sectors get hit. So if you get caught whilst you're scaling that middle management part and your profit levels are low and you're not got access to capital, it can literally just kill you there and then. Even it's not your fault. It's just the market did what the market did, and you've just not got a stable enough business.
And literally, it also happens from just going from from 100 grand turnover to 1 million turnover or whatever, or going from one development site live at any given time to 4 sites live at any given time. The kind of, unless you are a shit hot all rounded PM guy or woman with tons of experience, you might still be able to handle that with well. But like for myself, I wasn't even though I was exposed to the property sector, not from a construction background and all that sort of stuff. I was never on a new build site before I built one, and that I would not recommend that at all. But you go through massive learning curves there. But for businesses listening to get through the Death Valley, I would recommend 2 main things. One, before you do so, make sure that you are liquid, more liquid than you need at the moment, and or you have great funding lines already in place. So try not to just bootstrap that journey, because that's mega. A lot of the stress comes from the financial implications, and obviously, and there's a big chance that your metrics will start dipping. So like it could be cost per acquisition, or it could be your gross margin, or even net margin, or all that sort of stuff starts dropping, and it becomes stressful. But if you have liquidity or finance lines in place that back up the plan for a period of time, because you just got to get to X level and it starts restabilizing. Again, I'm not trying to jump here, but it happened in our development business. We geared up to be able to handle 12 live sites simultaneously. That means our overhead blew up. That means our overhead to revenue ratio was not where it meant to be. And technically we were way overstaffed than what we should have been. But I knew that what was coming in the immediate future was our turnover was going from sub 10 million to 30 million. And I'd rather that short-term pain and make sure we get there safely than the other way. And the other one, so the first one is liquidity, funding lines, cash. And then the other one is actually the decisions you make. Try to make decisions that aren't permanent until you see those green shoots that your plan is working. That makes sense. So to get there, if you don't go and completely wipe out your sales manager channel, if you're and do something completely brand new, when you don't even know that it's going to work yet. Because very, very quick story, I knew somebody who had a retailing and online retailing business, reselling business, and a lot of the trade was coming through the website. And for some reason, they thought it was a good idea because they wanted to. They had this new plan. They completely changed over their website instantly, but something in the back end went wrong, and all of their Google ranking, all of their traffic, and all of their things fell off a cliff. And they literally went from, I can't remember the figures, but I remember it's impactful. They lost in terms of revenue, millions in that one decision. So be very, very careful. I can't reverse that now.
Just to touch on that with some growth, if there is anyone out there with what I would call a independent sort of company where you're probably still sort of sub 30 employees and you're breaking 1 million, or you're heading towards, I feel like 1 million is the 1 million turnover is like the magic mark. Darren, I don't know if you notice this when you go to business events like the Goldman Sachs, everyone's like, in the next 3 years we want to hit 1 million turnover, and it's like everyone's golden target. But anyway, if you are in that space, it doesn't have to be surmountable risk. If you get the right backing, you can get seed capital to help you get to the next stage without so much risk. Go, look, partner with this person, don't guarantee what you need to deliver,
You can, but I always think it's better if you can sell your way to there. If you can sell your way to $1 million, i.e.,
But yeah, bootstrap it.
And businesses with a positive working capital cycle can really do that. That's a key thing there. If you get a business model where you get paid up front, you can pay your supply chain on terms, and your stock days are low. So literally, when you just do the math, there's debtor days minus credit days minus stock days, and it's positive. That means you can grow cash positively, and that is an actually barrier. It's just when you lump is your overheads that sits under that line, then which becomes a problem. That's more of a gross line. I think. Go on, Jack.
So I would say bootstrapped is a good idea unless you're going really big. It depends what the journey is, because what's the
It depends
point
what the
in
journey is.
just to
fucking
get to $1
around
million,
for 5 years
just to get to $1 million.
on a shoelace or a shoestring to get to the point where you've gone from 400 turnover to 800 over the 5 years? If you want to be a 400 million pound turnover business, you're going to need a different team and a different, completely different executive team, completely different layers of the business, different funding structures, and you're going to have to capital raise multiple times to get there. If you want to do that, you might just be as soon as possible.
I mean, it does depend on the business, isn't it? But if you can get to $1 million within 3 years of actually operating the business, so not from getting into a sector, but from operating, that should be like a minimum target, I think, if you're bootstrapping.
Well, I don't know. That's quite difficult, because like $1 million in a turnover in different industries, it means different things, right? The weighting of it is different. If you're, for example, if you're doing $1 million turnover in construction, it's like new build construction, you'll get there probably faster than Jack, with respect, but you probably agree with this. $1 million in a surveying business, it's so, the weighting of that is so
100%.
different.
Yeah. Well, when you look at that slice of spend, let's say you've got a £2 million construction contract, the measured survey is only 8k.
Yeah.
But our margins are larger.
Yeah.
Much larger.
You want to cut that for any potential customers there that's just listening to that.
Well, no, fuck it. They pay what the market pays, don't they?
Your margins are really large. So
yeah, well, our net margins aren't, because we're reinvesting.
Overhead, probably, isn't it? Overhead and stuff like that.
But bear in mind, with Jack's XP surveys, like Jack, if you were if all you did was XP surveys, it'd be bigger than it is right now.
That's a great question.
We often talk about that.
What would you do, Jack, if you could just focus on one thing?
If you just did XP surveys, how big do you reckon you could have it by now?
Or what would you pick first? What would you pick if it was just one thing?
I mean, XP surveys is probably the most fun to sort of scale to a national business and exit or float. So probably if it's sort of going good guns for some, and it's also not limited to the UK. We can draw a survey for someone in America. We just need the boots on the ground to do it. So I feel that it's probably the most fun to take to a national company. I mean, if you, for an example, I know Darren just made a sentiment to it, depends what industry you're in, for turnover. But if you combine all of our turnovers together, XP surveys could be doing 30 million a year, which would be one of the biggest surveying businesses in the UK, and would probably exit to a PE fund that we already know that's bought one in 2017. Our goal is to get to basically over 12 mil turnover in the next sort of 6 to 8 years, and that's an exitable amount.
I was going to say, just want to move on to one topic. But yeah, it's a good intro there, talking about Dorian's business.
Intro, we're an hour in.
But now, good. This is basically what it's like to just idly chit chat, and we've recorded it, but hopefully it's useful for people as well. But this now, yeah, go on, D. Yeah, say it.
I was just saying, I was on a podcast the other day, and it's going to be released soon. And I looked at my calendar before I went in, because I have an associate now helping me manage my calendar.
Oh, actually, this is big news. Big news. D has gotten a PA.
Well, we don't call it PA. She's my associate.
Executive associate.
Executive associate, yeah. And so it was on the ski trip, and obviously, there's both Stuart and Ryan was like, what are you doing, type of thing. I should be focusing on these big things that will, which we've talked about. These are where I'm involved in: strategic relationships, fundraising, getting deals over the line, moving the business forward in the right direction, so we can achieve this bad boy.
Look at that bad boy
in the future, right? So the vision's there. It's just whilst I have also been hyper focused. That's why I've taken her off the wall a second.
D, why is that? Oh, right. I was going to say, why is that behind your desk?
Yeah, because I stripped it all back and basically I just put like a 90-day goal in, and so I just took it off because the problem that's a good thing, right? But the problem you got with that is when I look at that every morning, it screws with me because the decisions you need to make for that isn't the same decisions you need to make for the next quarter in terms of business operation, business excellence. It isn't. And whilst I don't have an ops director, which that's also some other news, which I'll talk about on the next podcast. But basically, I was speaking on the skin. They're like, why? What you need help? Obviously, there's lots of logistics stuff. I travel a lot. I'm in loads of meetings. I was still dealing with my own diary appointments, and even a simple as having booking one meeting when I took back the you have to coordinate 4 people's diaries, and there was clashes, and I was just this back and forth. I'm thinking to myself, this is carnage just for one meeting. So anyway, Mia, who organised the ski trip, very bright individual. She's got a high dose of common sense as well, which I think is very rare. Anyone who's
Very
scaled
useful.
a team,
Very
it's
useful.
very useful. But common sense. If I could put values up and change them on the board in my office, I would fucking put common sense up there. But it's like,
But you don't want to pay for them to be changed.
Yeah, exactly. But anyway, so she's very good, and she's helping me out now with all that. And already I can see an improvement. So she has diary access, email access, and social media access, and all of that. But coming on to it very quickly, she booked a meeting in my diary to go onto this podcast. And in the morning, so I was meant to be at the podcast for 11. In the morning, I was doing stuff. 9 a.m. I looked at my calendar notification, clicked into it, and I seen a note underneath. It was actually 2 meetings in one. One was a podcast. The other one was a business masterclass that I was to deliver. And I did no prep for at all. So I was like, oh God, I've got an hour now to prep for a business masterclass. And so I created a acronym, and to help me with it. So I was thinking about what to do, and so I created an acronym to take from the A to Z of starting a business. And what do you reckon I should do? Do you reckon I should say what it is now? I don't really want to steal the thunder from the podcast coming out, but what do you reckon? I'll just give the acronym, is it? Or what do you reckon I should...
Fucking say whatever you want, man. This is a free speech platform.
Fuck it, yeah. So I created the acronym, and it was that, this is it, it's daring and visionary businesses make sales, create brands, know systems, and thrive, right? So I made that up, and every beginning word, the letter of every beginning word, represents a step in scaling the business from start to finish. And I created that within the hour. And I don't know, I think you guys are the same. My memory outside of work stuff is really, really bad. In that same podcast, I asked the one lady's name 3 times, went straight on to do a recording of it, forgot it. And I'm terrible with stuff like that. But I remember, obviously, that sort of stuff sticks in my mind. So, yeah, I think, I don't know where I got onto this from. But anyway,
you've hired a PA.
I'll run with it. Hired a PA, and there's a podcast coming out soon that gives you the A to Z of running a business. When it drops, I will repeat it on here in case anybody doesn't watch that one, and we'll put it on and see if you guys agree with the A to Z steps from that acronym, or if you would disagree with any of them. Which would
that'd be good actually. Yeah, we can hash through it. Get the 3 of us to hash through it.
Me and Ryan should we do a Emperor of Rome?
Yeah.
Yes. Maybe no.
You got a gold coin for your participation.
Yeah. Are you not entertained?
All right, now we're moving on. Now we're moving on to Trump and the imposed tariffs on the UK. So Trump hits the UK with 10% tariffs as he ignites global trade war. So obviously this has been coming for a while, and we'll just read snippets from this article. So Donald Trump has hit the UK with tariffs of 10% on exports to the US as he ignited a global trade war that could wipe billions off economic growth. The US president accused other nations, including allies, of looting, pillaging, raping, and plundering the US as he announced tariffs on economic rivals, including 20% on the EU and 34% on China, as a part of what he dubbed Liberation Day. Downing Street, which had been expecting a 20% rate to be imposed on the UK, expressed relief to have escaped the higher rate. Keir Starmer's more conciliatory approach to the Trump administration appeared to have paid off. Conciliatory. It's a nice word, isn't it? However, the UK's growth forecasts are likely to be downgraded as a result, as if they can't get downgraded anymore. The OBR's just halved this year's anticipated growth. So I think it'll be like 0.2% by the time this year's over. And the tariffs could cost thousands of jobs and force government to implement further spending cuts or tax rises in autumn. Then last few bits, UK ministers have ruled out imposing retaliatory barriers. Well, not that, retaliatory barriers against the US. It's like an ant trying to throw shit at a fucking elephant. Retaliatory barriers while talks on an economic deal with the US continue. And this is what should have happened a good solid 6 months ago. There should have been a deal that was in the public domain, that was being spoke about, but Labour just haven't secured anything. It's just like it's been quiet. And now they're retaliating with trying to get a deal, and that it should have been preempted. So for UK companies which export more than 60 billion worth of goods to the US each year, so UK companies exporting 60 billion. So obviously a 10% tariff on that is expensive for us. We're a much smaller nation. So in a watershed announcement for global trade, Trump announced that he was setting a universal baseline 10% tariff on imports into the US while hitting dozens of trading partners with higher levels of up to 50%. He also hit out an exorbitant VAT rates, which he viewed as a barrier to US firms seeking to sell into markets such as the UK, where the taxes apply. So Trump's spoken about this for a while now, that he sees VAT in other countries as another way, as another tariff, effectively, because it's still hitting the bottom line of the businesses, obviously, who the VAT is imposed on. At a press conference in the White House Rose Garden, he said, "For decades, our country has been looted, pillaged, raped, and plundered by nations near and far, both friends and foe alike. Our country and its taxpayers have been ripped off for more than 50 years, but it's not going to happen anymore." So America taking a big stance there. That is, looking like it could be a 6 to potentially £10 billion cost to the UK. And that will hurt us if we can't get a trade deal agreed. And the idea of further tax hikes, I cannot imagine that's in the government's domain at the moment with what's happening already. What do we think, guys? What do you reckon's? Obviously, we by default, through what we do, we're very hard cost intensive. A lot of the stuff we use on construction sites is imported. So these prices will get baked into, I'm sure, some of the things that we procure as well. What do you guys think?
Feels like we've only just studied out the build costs going absolute AWOL. Yeah, I mean, there's a few points to pick up on there. It's obviously a massive change. It's rare that there's this much geoeconomics impacts everyone from like one decision and out. If he releases he's doing X, Y, and Z, it's very rare that it impacts the complete world. But I mean, interestingly, one thing that we can take as a blessing is we've left the EU and we've saved 10% there. They're getting taxed more than us. So we're paying less tax than they are, which is good. Maybe they might deviate through the UK more, bring a bit of business through the UK, use us as a golden gateway.
Yeah.
Use us as a golden gateway. Come back crawling.
That would be interesting.
Yeah. Lots of beautiful relationships.
In the United Kingdom.
So one thing that I find really interesting is like obviously Trump is taxing basically import-export for the benefit of the US. I think this is going to create like a better free market for people actually bringing it upon themselves. So for an example, before anything going sort of involving the US obviously has a tax attached to it, but I think it's going to create a lot of deviation from that. So people avoiding that tax. So saying if I'm in a 20% profit margin business and that involves being taxed 20% from the US, I might actually go, let's go in ham on, selling this product to Hamburg or buying this product from Hamburg, because there's no taxation. There's not as much tax. There is taxation in and out of the EU, but as much taxation within that chain line that could then be a profit margin. So I think that longer term, it will create free market movement. So that will actually have a negative impact on the US taxation and make them more insular and independent. But I also think it will be the same for us. We probably will become more independent and use less from the across the pond. So short term, obviously, it's shit because costs go up and everyone's delivering. Like most of the people that listen to us, if you're on a site, you haven't costed that much for inflationary costs across the project, which might be 2 years. You might be on a project for 3 years. So, I mean, that example of that project that I was talking about earlier, which we sold within our own network, we got the position on that site 5 years ago. Our build cost to come to our purchase price is 5 years old. And that's one of the reasons that we're also selling it.
Well, we've seen that. Like that, everybody knows about the build cost inflation, and we've experienced it. Definitely, the costs that we were building at in 2019, 2020, compared to what they are now, is genuinely 40% higher. So, and that has been probably one of the biggest reasons why a lot of companies have failed because of fixed price contracts. We've talked about that before. But it's funny because on these tariffs that have just been released, we talked about it earlier about a swing of positive and negative. And what I read was it depends what you read, doesn't it? Really, the answer is it's quite uncertain as to exactly how it's going to go. But the positive, from the US point of view, they're saying they could raise up to $6 trillion extra dollars over a period of time from the extra tariffs. The downside is what others are saying is that it will actually result in a trade war, unemployment, goods being diverted from exported to the USA, as you said, to go into other places. But as always, he's made the decision. He's going ahead, so time will tell. Really,
I think what it really means for us is we need some really good negotiations going on to try and find more favourable free trade agreements. And I think that's ultimately what will happen. Can Labour deliver on that? Don't know. We'll see. They might be forced to by the markets, but
there's obvious sectors which will really struggle. The way I see this as a foul swoop is it's really impacting really badly some specific sectors and probably having an osmosis effect with others. So for an example, specific sectors that will really change is the automotive sector, for an example.
Advanced engineering.
I mean, that's a start. Then you've got an equal example, Scotch whiskey is sold more in the US than anywhere else in the world. And if there's a taxation that then comes to that industry, that then means that Scotch is just more expensive. When Scotch is more expensive, normally demand decreases. And therefore, Scotch companies are going to have to completely change their model, their pricing, their infrastructure, how they trade, probably double down on also de-risking that across other worldwide trade. And the steel industry equally is apparently going to be massively impacted, which I don't know why it is. I believe it's because 25% of our steel goes to the US market, which is nuts. Quarter of our trade of steel.
That's quite surprising actually, because America with they had the Steel Corporation. They had. But in terms of us, though, from construction point of view, obviously they would already import tariffs in any way. Do you reckon is that work? Because we don't export, we obviously.
I don't think so for the foreseeable, but I think eventually this will play out. It's kind of like the inertia will build when as companies have to start repricing, then they'll become competitive as to where they can sell.
Yeah, because the biggest risk really was that if US was more aggressive with UK and then UK reciprocated like some other countries may do now and increased their import tariffs.
Yeah.
But because it sounds like straight away from the response from Keir Starmer that he's not planning to do that. Is that in fact he's happy with the 10% and there's not going to be any change to our import tariffs with them. So really then we shouldn't see much of a change.
Apparently,
in fact,
also
sorry, it could actually go the other way, where if other countries increase their import tariffs and we don't, it may be more cost effective for more supply to come to the UK from the US than into those places, having actually a deflationary impact for us. That's optimism for you.
Us compared to Europe, we are more competitive in that sense because we've got.
Someone's got to chuck the optimistic hat in the ring, haven't they?
But that's some news there. We'll see how this develops, but I think a free trade agreement is absolutely necessary with the US. We need to. They're going to have a strong 4 years, and we need to be a part of that.
Have you seen the mutters of him trying to stay in for it? Because he always said he would. This would
know.
be his last term.
Yeah.
The power now, though.
They go for another.
That power is addictive, isn't it?
He can, yeah. So
executive orders.
If Trump becomes VP in the next election, so let's say Vance goes for president and Trump goes for VP, and then on day 2, who will then be President Vance, then abdicates, then Trump by default can become president again, and he can do that twice more, I think. So he could effectively be in by like 2038.
Yeah, I don't think Vance would. I think Vance
would
would
run
run
a career for that, wouldn't he?
Yeah,
you'd literally have to be like a loyal lapdog to do that, because you would blow up his entire career. You would never be able to.
Yes or no answer question for you two. Will you ever go into politics?
No. Not in the UK. Not in the UK. Sorry.
I think it depends. I think and this is me putting my technologist hat on. If there is a race to the bottom of marginal cost of production because technology, AI, and robotics becomes so prevalent that it almost becomes worthless. Yeah, well, it almost becomes worthless to actually start a business because the technology is just going to commoditize it overnight. Then there kind of won't be much business acumen requirement left in the market, and that's when I think policy is going to become the most important domain for human debate, and that's where I'd favor being a politician over a business person.
So I would be a special advisor, but I wouldn't be actively in running a party or trying to lead a party or anything like that. But I would definitely be, and like I kind of already am on a much really, really small scale, as part of groups to the small business, which obviously, as you guys know, and Jack, no doubt you'll be doing it as well next year, going like to 10 Downing Street and all that, providing.
Well, how do you measure it? How do you measure it? It's to me, the measure is easy. Where can you produce more impact at the moment in the private sector and business? But if technology gets to a point where it just commoditizes that whole thing, then it's not going to be business. It's going to be policy driven. It's going to be philosophically driven. And that's where, if you're not then in politics, you kind of you don't have a horse in the race. You're kind of just, another civilian. So I think it would have to get to that point first. But for the next 10 years, being a businessman, you're going to have more impact, aren't you, on everything?
What about you, Jack?
Yeah, exactly the same. I'd be more than happy to be an enterprising advisor. I think that the public sector, and I mean, you can't run a business based off crowd. If you, for an example, let's say you were running a theme park and you just tried to keep customer satisfaction and fairity across that place, you've got to have corporate and commercial perspective on everything equal with well-being. And that's where obviously the difficulty comes in any form of running a country, because the economic health and commercial output has to be blurred with ethical and health, like physical health, and free movement and free speech. And once you combine those, they compromise each other. So it's you need a balance. And I'd be happy to be on the business side of the balance. I'm not so good at dealing with the other side, because when people just say I don't like my job, I say, well, leave then. And that's why I can't operate on that side. Whereas if it came down to running a commercial enterprise, I think I'd love to help with that, improve efficiencies.
Hey, boys.
There he is. Yeah, the candy Cain. How's it going?
Hey, boys. He can't hear you, but they said, how's it going, Cain? How's it going, mate? Is it going?
Yeah, I'm building Ryan's construction company for him still, boys. So fucking going on.
How is the empire? Oh, ask Cain what's his top tips to run a construction company,
What's
Ryan?
your top tips? You got three top tips for running a construction company. Go, top of your head.
Pre-construction, price gangs, and cost to complete.
Done.
Cool.
Then you'd be profitable. That's it.
He didn't even hesitate. That is a man on a mission. That is a man on a mission.
So, if we were where Jack were, we'd be making a fucking fortune.
I would agree. I actually agree.
Please let Cain know there is such thing as transport, so he could.
He could come down. Yeah, fucking hell.
Henley would have a shock.
Oh, the Northern invasion, mate. That's what that'd be. They built a wall for a reason. All right, last bit then, guys, because I appreciate you've got to go soon, Jack. Let's bitch about some banks. So Who's the best banks at the moment? What's happening with banks? Why are banks getting so shit?
Can I kick us off? So, I mean, this conversation originally started because later today I'm recording a podcast with the bank and having a meeting with another bank and blah blah blah. But we're in a world where, as a young, aspiring, or not even young, aspiring entrepreneur and developer, you're going out your way to find a very complicated business opportunity to de-risk it. And we've already talked about de-risking deals today on this call, to then put your family home on the line and all of your assets, to borrow the capital, to put all of your blood, sweat, and tears in to deliver it, to hopefully take the construction risk on board, planning risk on board, delays with the public sector in planning, compliance. Then you're also running market risk, which Ryan discussed, to hopefully make a profit. So it's a very risky game, and it can go wrong quickly if you're not on your onions. And then the lenders, they sit in their sort of marble castles, and they only lend you up to certain percentages at any given time. They retain the interest, which is their profit. The interest fee is their profit. They take that day one. They go, right, there's your money. We're having and keeping this profit. They also tend to hold and not release the contingency amount. They also make you jump through absolute hoops with the legal and the underwriting process. So you haven't got this, please prove that. You haven't done this, do that. Please, come to me and do X, Y, and Z. So you're jumping through all these hoops. And then at the end of it, if it hasn't worked, they take the sight off your hands and wipe you out of the deal, and that's that. Now, we're in a very autonomous working relationship with lenders. We pretty much do lending on every one of our sites. The bank that we're buying, hopefully, actually we complete today. We've decided to not get a bank involved to buy the bank, because it's just so much aggro, because we know we're going to have to refinance it out once we've got the planning in place. So we're actually buying privately with investor finance. And that's how much of a pain and how much I detest working with the lenders. But we need them to do what we do. Now, what's going through everything that we've listed there, why is it such an outweighed relationship? You give any other example of a supply chain relationship and working business, it's normally more fair. It's normally more risk fair. It's normally more returns fair. And it's normally what I like about business relationships is when you can work with a business and you grow together. And that's the ultimate. You both make a margin, you both do well out of it, and you can do more business as it goes forward. But I feel that from banks, we hop from rate driven or process driven or people driven, and then it's very difficult to build that working relationship with the bank like it used to be in the day. So that's my little rant and tee up to why we don't like lenders.
Let me follow on from that with a quick one, because there's so many different rabbit holes we could go into with the lender's process, relationship, all the different cons and pros and shit. But one core thing, and my dad's been heavily involved with this. He's come from the finance world. He's part of, I'm sure he won't mind me saying this, he loves these podcasts as well. He's part of what's called the Transparency Task Force, which is a UK kind of association that lobbies Parliament. They show up in Parliament. All to do with how banks and personal guarantees and cross-collateral guarantees have caused absolute turmoil for businesses and small businesses and owners who've been completely screwed by banks changing their minds, by banks calling in PGs when they shouldn't have done, and all these kind of things, and abuse in the financial sector. And they're trying to unearth all this stuff, and they're making really good progress. And it all comes down to this idea that banks can get security outside of the given domain that they're actually lending against. Like, it just shouldn't, personal guarantees should not be a thing. They just shouldn't be for commercial activity. Like, the bank should be taking on that risk, isolated and siloed to that given investment case, rather than just completely secure their risk by going, give me a house, give me a corporate guarantee, give me everything else. I want full security, but by the way, I'm still going to charge you this exorbitant interest rate. And like, that should be banned in the UK. If we ban personal guarantees, then there is a fallout effect here, and there'll be a rebalancing. But it's PGs and just cross collateralizing. It shouldn't be okay.
I agree that I think that's an unfair balance, but I don't believe it should be completely no guarantees, because then most developers, every site they do, they'll have a free roll of the dice. I do think there should be some hurt in something not working. If a property person is doing a deal without putting any cash in, per se, you know, whether it's a limited and the way that I think it should be calculated is the value of the loan, and then replicate like the value of the person, so their sort of net worth, and then how does that merge? So let's say you're worth £1 million equity on paper, and you're doing a £10 million loan. Technically, they should be covered up to 70% GDV or LTV at any point. So 30% is at risk. You've probably already softened that. So a fire sale is 15% at risk. So let's say 15% of that £10 million loan is 1.5 million, and you're worth 1 million. I don't think it should then just wipe you out. I agree with that. But relative, I think it should be that because there's already a bit of comfort, it should be a reduced amount of your actual net worth.
Can I speak to this a bit? Yeah, because I think this has happened over the last like 50 years. It's been a very slow thing, but it's happened. And I feel like personal guarantees and the whole introduction of a really arduous conveyancing and solicitors process, what it's done, it's automated what used to be relationship and reputationally driven. So if you wanted to get loans from the banks, you know, going back before those times or even early this century, you had relationships with banks, relationships with underwriters. You nurtured those things. You built a reputation, and you could get lending without needing to put your house on the line at the same time. But instead, now it's like the banks have realised they can lend way more and way easier if they just pay a load of panel solicitors to deal with the conveyancing, and then just wrap people up in PGs. And they've like removed that relationship. Like, how many of us think about how much we borrow and how much we spend and how much we contribute to our sectors, just with the level of businesses we operate? And do any of us really have a very good, tangible relationship with a bank manager who can actually make decisions that could actually impact us, and not someone who's basically just a client liaison?
Let me give you two examples of why we hate banks, because I think this will put some context between it. So I'm going to talk about two actual case studies. One is a deal that we bought on bridging finance. We bought the site for 1.4 million. The site within 9 months, because we had got the planning, we had got the site geared up for what we wanted to do. We were refinancing it to deliver the development. That was then valued at 1.8 million. So we've added over 400 grand's worth of value on this particular site. We realized in the refinance process that our original lawyer, who had gone into administration, didn't file our title requisitions. So from someone else's wrongdoing, we were then delayed literally 2 weeks. And what that lender did, and I'm actually happy to name and shame because I'd advise avoiding them, is for the first 9 months, it cost us £82,000 in interest, right? For that tiny chunk of time, and I think it was literally like a matter of weeks, they charged us £90,000 in penalties and fees. So they made more money punishing us than they did lending to us as capital people. And that's Hope Capital, so avoid them. But that's an example of how they've taken the absolute piss. And if they were a business working a building relationship up, they'd have gone, actually, you can't sue the lawyer. You can't, I want to work with you again. You know, let's actually take a view on it. And we were prepared to pay like 30 grand just for a few weeks. But we just thought that was an absolute piss take, that they made more punishing than actually doing their job. And that's example number one.
But can I just double tap on that, just in relation to that whole relationship with a bank, the bank being a part of commerce and business rather than just this cold stone face behind a PG and solicitor army like that it's become. And like, we should, as business owners, be able to have relationships with our funding lines that we can negotiate, and it shouldn't just be, here's the blank terms, accept it, don't accept it.
But to also put this in perspective, exactly to that point, I called a meeting with the underwriter and literally like one of the associate directors, and just to get them on a call so that they could hear what is happening and then be comfortable making that decision and charging that interest, right? So I booked it in, jumped on a call, and I said, look, we've overrun. Your default and your fees are very clear. This is actually the situation we're in. The funniest part of it is, a few weeks before this happened, they asked us if we wanted an extension and agreed extension terms, but they wouldn't warrant those then after the fact that we actually did need the extension. So this is the principle: is they said they could do it for cheaper and then didn't. But anyway, so I jumped on a call with the associate and the underwriter, and I sort of said, I'm an independent business owner. I run, for example, a surveying business. If I found out someone in my team was doing this to one of our clients, I would hit the roof. So I'm telling you, this is what we've done. This is the loan. This is what's happening out. This is how it's panning out, and this is what your team are looking to charge me. And he basically just went, "Yep." I went, "Fine, I'll pay it. If you're comfortable with that, I'll pay it, and I'll never use you again, and I'll make sure that a lot of people that I know in the industry will never use you either." And that was it.
Yeah. But this is the thing, they don't need to care about, and for anyone listening to this, sorry, D, I know you've not had your chime in here yet, but
No. Look, I've had enough.
You've had your moments today.
Yes, I have. Yeah.
But this,
I've got another example.
Go on then.
Here's my other example, just for listeners. So the other example is actually a live deal we have at the moment. We're almost finishing, and it was a doctor's surgery that we're converting to 4 apartments is what we have permitted development for. We bought the site with a lender that had a facility of £400,000. Lent us the money to buy the site to convert this building into 4 apartments. We knew that we could probably get a 5th. We squeezed it in, but we didn't want to waste the time doing it and also push the boundary on acquiring. So we did then redo the planning, submit in for 5. And what that then meant is we had to delay a part of the construction to cater for the 5th unit, which are adding 300 grand's worth of value to the GDV. So about 20% of value. And the crazy thing is we could build that 5th unit all within the same budget. So we didn't have any different budget requirements, but we're increasing the GDV significantly. The project monitoring surveyor came to site and said, "I'm not happy with the progress in this area." We then presented the planning application link, the process, the time, the new budget, everything. We said, "Look, this is what we want to do. We want to add the value, obviously, because our margin goes from being 300k to 600k on this site. And this is what we are delaying the site by probably a month or 2. It was literally like 6 weeks." Presented to them, and all they did was then forwarded it on to recovery and just cast it into the recovery team. And I was like, we're being punished for adding value. So we're in a world where our business is run off creating value in real estate, and we've got a partner that is punishing us for doing that. So then it took 50 conversations to get it drawn back into the lending team. So I was having a frank conversation. We had to do new valuation, new PMS, all of that sort of stuff. And then after months of us funding this site cash, where we weren't allowed to draw down any money, I'm talking like serious cash to fund this. Although the bill was only 400k, we're right in the middle of it. So we were funding, literally, like I think we funded something like 170 grand in construction costs to keep this site going, to de-risk it for them, and also ensure that we could get to our end goal. And then they finally went, "Oh yeah, makes sense. Okay, let's crack on now." And I was like, why is it that difficult for someone to sit on the other side of the table and go, "I can see what you're doing here. You're doing a good job. Well done. We'll back that."
Yeah. And this is the thing, like with destroying the relationships. And Dean, I'm going to throw it to you in 2 secs, but I just want to, just for our viewers' sake, we sound like we're complaining here about banks, and we are, but we're not complaining because we're little bitches and we're going, we want banks to be nicer. This has happened because of regulators and the bank's power with regulators and making it harder and harder over time using policy for the small SME people, for us to get involved with banks, build relationships and borrow money and do it on a relationship kind of basis. You can see the banks are getting rid of their bricks and mortar stores. They've brought in all the PG stuff that's basically mandated now. And it should be that the regulators step in and go, no, we draw a line here for the consumer, for us, for the borrower, that if you're a bank and you want to do this and you want to take this and that and KYC and PG this and cross collateral this, then you also take on an element of risk. And that allows a free market to then outcompete. And then you're competing on terms, relationship, and reputation, rather than just, here's some money, but you've got to sign all this and dot all those I's and cross all those T's, and then you'll get it. And the banks just make that harder and harder and harder. And that's been proven by the AML stuff that's now been passed from the banks onto agents and solicitors who are meant to be operators providing a commerce service. And now they're having to do all of this compliance stuff with their PI on the line because the banks don't want to take responsibility. So just for anyone listening, we're not complaining about the banks as such. We're complaining about the regulation and the whole environment that's been built around lending that's making it so difficult. But yeah, Dorian.
I think Jack was definitely complaining about the bank there. So
yeah,
but I mean, it's an interesting model, these secondary lenders, because obviously like things like Hope Capital, they set up with some founder capital, they bring on some private investors, they focus on like the unregulated bridging and then development finance market and stuff like that. They get a book behind them. It's just the same as Roma Finance as well. And then they go out to the lenders, like the lender that backs Hope Capital is Shawbrook Bank. They have a 25 million revolving credit facility with them that they then deploy. But Shawbrook is itself a direct lender. But obviously, Hope have a different product suite, a different segment of the market. And it's funny because so Shawbrook fund them, then they carry on doing that lending. And Roma, they have facilities with other banks, but like NatWest funds, they have a big facility with NatWest. So these are all like kind of secondary lenders with a bit of principal capital, but they're backed by the same lenders as well. But coming back full circle, everything you've said, I understand and agree with and sympathise with, and is definitely stuff that we experience as well. Anyone listening, though, I think just with a bit of realism, the number one reason why it's like that is because demand outstrips supply, basically. So, and whilst you're in that position, they've got the power, and more than likely is they're not going to change. Again, just think. So, what really this is where fundraising and access to finance, and like both Jack and Ryan, you're both masters of it now, really. And as you guys know, we've also raised significant sums from very different sources. And I think if you're really serious about growing a development business, it is just non-negotiable. You have to have many different access to finance, different funding routes and lines, in case you come across something and someone's been difficult. You can very quickly swap to someone else. Like Jack, I know in previous deals you've done where you've had to raise money in incredibly short time frames and serious amounts of capital as well. You've got like a dozen people you can go to now that know, like, and trust you. You've worked with before. So yeah, I think I just finished on that point. Really, anyone listening, don't. Whilst I agree with it all, and I do want it to change, definitely. I don't think in our short time scale that is going to. So you need to. The only way to mitigate it is by getting more access to finance, more routes to finance behind you, and then ultimately the only way to really mitigate is by controlling the money. But that involves creating your own fund and then having it subscribed, etc., which we will do.
But D, I just want to elaborate on that point that there is the symptom is supply and demand led. But when you have regulators that overregulate a market, they distort that market. And I think we've just seen the financial market. I mean, the financial markets in London, and the international financial advisors. Over time, they've just been so regulated, it's insane. And that's now coming to all of this short-term dev finance stuff. And the more they regulate it, the more anti-competitive it gets, and that's when it becomes very difficult. And you have these few backstop banks that fund all the other challenger banks.
Well, sorry. What I meant was they start off with principal capital, right? So they can make their own rules up. Then they get a book, and because they want to scale on their growth, they then raise money. For example, Hope got a 25 million revolving credit facility from Shawbrook, but for them to get that, they would have had to have agreed covenants and criteria for how they lend basically their money out. Roma, the same with originally their own capital, then now they backed with NatWest, maybe others, but at least NatWest I know of. The same thing, covenants get imposed on them from the main lenders.
Yeah,
that looks like a nice setting, Jack. I like the greenery there. It
Yeah.
looks a bit like you're in the rainforest.
These are all my plants.
Nice, man. Love some plants.
They're actually all propagated, so I propagate them off. So this is like the grandfather that propagates and makes all these
He's
baby
going to build a
ones.
forest in there. He's built a forest
This should turn into a forest. I didn't realise you were one of those herb guys.
I could give you. There's even more. There's some on this shelf, some on the table. We got them all going.
What's that horn thing? What's that?
That's a water buffalo that my dad shot in Africa. I'm really showing my heritage here.
Amazing. Wow.
You can tell Jack's from blue blood there, can't you? Papa was in Africa.
Yeah, watch out, Banks. We don't fuck around.
We're coming for you. All right. Well, look, on that, we'll close out this podcast. It's been a good one. Good one. Chucking back and forth, talking business, talking shop. Thank you, everyone who's listened so far. Make sure you share this podcast. Subscribe, man. Please. It helps us. Please. And we release these podcasts every Thursday at 5:30 a.m. on Spotify and YouTube. And we're going to start introducing some more guests as time goes on. We're going to bring on some more guests and try and switch up the conversation a bit and get to know other people's developers, business owners, things like that. If you know or can think of anyone you want us to get on the pod, then drop them in the comments, recommend them, and we'll reach out. And you should see more of that coming. And the next episode is the year mark. We'll think of something for it. Big love, boys. You got anything to say to sign off or?
comment any questions for next episodes, any guests that you would like us to get on. And I hope Stuart's enjoying wearing his, was it duck underwear that he was wearing around for the
Yeah.
Pedo. Being a pedo on a cruise ship.
That's it. My advice is just a bit more practical. Focus on pipeline.
Pipeline, baby.
Only the bigger one.
Yep.
See you later.
See you later. Big love.
Round up sound. Ooh, yeah.